Join the team.
Hey team, it's theMCGuiReView, and today we're going to take a look at, again, the Wizkids brand new box set for Heroclix, which is called What If. This is based on the Marvel universe. It's a full box set. If you're interested in what this box set is, or if you do want to see the unboxing of exactly what you're going to get when you get it out of the box, we do have a video on that already. So if you are interested in that, you can go take a look at that video. But in this one, we're going to get into a little bit of a review of the components. And if you are new to the Heroclix system, we're going to go over how this game works, as well as some of the rules to Heroclix. Okay, so to get out of the way really quick, just from a review perspective, I did find a few problems here. And this is not going to stop you from being able to play this game. It's not really going to interrupt anything, but since it is also a review, I feel like these things do need to be called out. So, a couple different things cosmetically. For the party Thor, one of the What If characters, instead of Thor getting kicked out and coming to Earth and then, becoming who the character is we've come to know, he instead gets kicked out of Asgard, comes to Earth, and throws a massive party. And that is Party Thor here in the What If box set. Now, for some reason, for Party Thor's cards, there is no artwork of the character on the back side of the card. You'll see here on all of the cards, they have one side that have the character's powers and a little piece of artwork. Then on the other side, they actually have all of their dial system. And we'll explain that here very soon. As well as you can tell right up here at the top, they have some artwork for that character. For some reason, and it must just be a manufacturing defect, the artwork was left off for Party Thor. So you'll see that is gone there. So we have that. There are a number of mistakes as far as like misspellings, misprint, that type of stuff that's in the rule book. I found a few different misspellings and different things like that. Just kind of some final pre-production things that I think could have been avoided. And there's a couple things that contradict themselves when it talks about first player, second player, and what order you do things in as far as like selecting maps and placing characters on the map. There's a couple statements in here that contradict one another. So again, outside of that, there really isn't much. The other thing that I did notice is on the back of the box here, it indicates that you get 8 scenarios that you can play through for the campaign. However, when you go through the actual scenarios that are included in the box, you do have one card, which is the overall story, which I think the actual campaign and the story system was done really, really well, and it's a really fun one. But then you have scenario A through scenario J, and that's 10. So I'm not sure why the box indicates that there was only 8 scenarios included. There are, in fact, 10 scenarios that were in this box, A through J, and I assume that is what will be going into full production. Again, this game was not slotted to be released fully into retail until the end of April. So I don't know if there's some of these things they might tweak. I don't know if this is just from the first run and they already know about some of these little mistakes and they'll have those corrected or not. But again, even if they're not, I guess you've seen it here, you know what to expect. And nothing really affects gameplay or hurts gameplay. Everything else is in perfect condition. All the tokens, all the miniatures, all the rules, the special little power sheets, and frankly, you're getting 10 here versus 8. So that's a bonus, right? Okay, so the review stuff is out of the way. You can take a look at the miniatures. I did show those up close on the unboxing. You'll get a little bit more of that here up close. Bear can do some work for us on what's on the table so you can see those again. So what we'll do here is kind of hit how do you play Heroclix and what is Heroclix all about. So this right here is the tile that you're going to use for the first scenario. Some scenarios will just use a single map tile like this, and the scenario will set that up for you. Some of them will use multiple tiles put together and a larger board. So when you come to your scenarios, and that's one of the first things that you're going to do if you're playing through the campaign, or if you just want to play a random scenario, that's fine as well. You will roll 2 of these dice at the beginning, and the player with the highest little dice roll-off will then, depending on first player or second player, they will choose the scenario, they'll choose, or if it's just a head-to-head, they may choose the particular map. Then you'll get to put your players on, your teams on the starting positions. Some will only have 3, some will have more full teams. It will depend on what the scenario is. And then you'll come to your scenarios, and on one side you'll get kind of the name of the scenario and a little storyline of what's going on in that scenario. And then on the back side, you'll basically get how is the win condition or lose conditions going to play out over the course of that scenario. And what's neat about the actual campaign is, depending on who the winner is, you'll see here on either side of the card, it'll say, if Doctor Strange Supreme's team wins, okay, do this. If the Watcher team wins, okay, do this. And sometimes those things may be the same early on, just to kind of get to the next scenario, but then it will start to kind of branch off, and it will make a difference on who wins. There will be different outcomes to the overall scenario. I do like that when games do that, when they have kind of a branching scenario difference when you go through, especially when they're games like this that are primarily designed to just be head-to-head miniatures games. And then when you get kind of that branching storyline, that adds a lot of fun. And I will say that the actual campaign that's included in this one is a really, really cool theme. It includes the various Infinity Stones. So you're going to get all the different Infinity Stones. There's a couple copies of each, that's why there's so many here. But you're going to get all the Infinity Stones, and you're going to use those, collecting them, doing things with them over the course of the campaign. And I thought that was pretty cool. When I saw these come out, I'm like, oh, sweet. And each one of them on the back will have a little ability and something different that you now can do with your team if you acquire these. So that's a really cool thing as well. Various tokens that you see here will be barriers that can be put down on the board. Everything is specified within these scenarios. You're going to get different things where you can have debris, you can have smoke, and some of those things are going to be created by destroying various things that are on the board. You can have walls and different debris that will be in the way on the board, and you can actually take a melee attack action as long as you do a specific amount of damage. It has to be at least 3 damage in one shot. You can actually break that stuff, and when you do, you then would put down these debris tokens. Either, if there was just a barrier in front of you, you'd put down 1. If it was a wall that you broke, you'd actually put down the debris on either side of where that wall would be. That's what you're going to use these tokens for. There's some reset tokens. This is kind of a special thing where you can put it next to your character, and it basically resets the character and removes all the action tokens, and then you would remove this from the game. So those are included. You do have your little action tokens. That would be as your various team members are taking actions, you would put those actions down next to the models. We'll talk more about those actions here in a minute when we get to kind of the rules section. There are these obelisks that are included as well, little tokens. These are used for the various different parts of the campaign. I'm not going to give away exactly what they do, but you will shuffle these up and put them on the board, and depending on what you see when you flip them over, it will make an outcome difference in whatever's going on in the scenario. And then you're also going to have a number of tokens here, which are going to be items that you can place on the board. Now, in a standard game and setup, you can place up to 3 of these little objects on the board that can be used. You can put them on there if you want to. Sometimes the scenarios will ask for them, and it's different things, like you've got a jackhammer and a old 45 record player. You've got a wrench. You've got a computer. There's just different, items and objects. They refer to them as objects that you can place on the map, and you will use those objects either by, one, you need to get to it, pick it up, and transport it somewhere else if it's part of a scenario, or you can get to it, pick it up, and you can actually throw it at another player. So you can use these objects as projectiles as well to throw and do damage at an enemy character on the other team. So that's another way that you can use these objects here. And that's part of Heroclix as well when it comes to the objects that can be put on the map, which is always fun, being able to pick up a toaster and chuck it at Party Thor. That's kind of fun. Okay? Then we are going to have these great power sheets. These are really the thicker laminated stuff, and they're really nice. You've got all of the powers and abilities for each one of your different actions that you can take. We've got our movement here. We've got our actual attack, whether it's ranged or close. We've got the defense, different things that can happen, powers when you're defending. We've got the damage types that are on here as well. And then on the back, you've got more of the damage types, but then you also have inherent abilities. You've got improved abilities and a key phrase abilities. So anytime you see any of these key words or these different icons that are on here, you can very quickly, and you'll find those on your character cards in the back here, where it shows all the icons and powers that are available to you. You'll then reference this until you get to the point where you've memorized it. That's why a lot of times, you'll pick your team and kind of stick with that team through the whole scenario. After the first couple scenarios, you're not going to be really referencing this much anymore. You're going to start to memorize what those powers do. Because there isn't too many for each character. But again, remembering all the powers for every character on your team can be a little bit of a learning curve initially with this game of Heroclix. Because every single character is essentially a hero, every single character has got a number of things that character can do outside of its standard just move and attack with the various different abilities and powers. And those powers can only trigger during certain periods of time based on where they are on their click dial, which is something that I think makes this game really unique and really fun. Is maybe they get hurt and then all of a sudden a power is accessible. Maybe a power is only accessible when they're full health, but when they start to take damage, then they lose that power. If you play Heroclix, the Hulk is a good example of when you actually start to get closer to death, the Hulk actually gets more powerful and more abilities will open up and be unlocked, which is kind of cool, right? That it offers that variability when you're playing, and every single team is very, very different. So it's good in this game when you first get in to grab a team, put it together, and stick with that team for a little while until you understand all the abilities of that team and how those abilities actually change over the course of those clicks from full health until being knocked out. Is what happens in this game when you die. You get knocked out, and once you're KO'd, then your model is out of the game, and you'll set it off to the side, and now you only have, like if you started with 3, now you only have 2. And it just continues to go into the last person standing, or one of the scenario objectives, if there's more than one, is accomplished. So it's not always the last model character standing. Sometimes it is whoever has accomplished the actual scenario first can win. So that's nice that it has that design in this miniatures game as well. It's not just a head-to-head, last person standing is the winner. So the last main component really is the cards. We kind of already went over that, but in more detail, one side of the card is going, and there's going to be 2. There's going to be 2 of these cards in this deck for every single model that's included in the game. Okay? It's the rest of the models. So all the models that are included in the game, there are 10 fully painted, ready-to-go models. They all will have 2 cards. And the purpose of that is one card is designed around their basic part of the dial, and another card is designed around the advanced part of the dial. Now, you may think, okay, is advanced just mean more rules and more stuff? Not really. The basic version of the game, or when you play in the basic dial form, it just has all the same rules are there, but there may be a few less powers. So you really want to play in that quote-unquote basic form of the game, which really isn't basic. I mean, it's the full-on game pretty much. You really want to play in that form until you have thoroughly learned each of the powers of the characters, as well as any team synergy powers that you can have. Like the Watcher here and Doctor Strange Supreme, they do have team-based powers, because they're kind of the team leaders that will affect the whole team. There's a lot of synergies as well, like one character is close to another character or further away from a character. There's all kinds of different stuff that you can do, like any of these tabletop miniature games. And you want to learn that before you go to the advanced side. So here's an example here of the basic versus advanced for Party Thor. I'm just going to show you these sides of the cards there. You'll see on the basic there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the advanced there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's more stuff that's available. And not only is there more powers that are available to you as a character, those powers are also generally kind of amped up, kind of taken to the epic level, really, to tell you the truth. So, if it's a good example would be your Hydra Stomper here. So in the what if world, this is actually Steve Rogers, but instead of Steve Rogers becoming, as we know him, Captain America, he's kind of massively injured before he takes the juice and becomes Captain America. He's massively injured, and Howard Stark, instead of turning him into Captain America, they actually build him kind of an Iron Man 1.0 suit that he becomes what they know as Hydra Stomper, and he's in this Iron Man type suit and just goes in and does all the damage in this big suit. That's kind of the storyline behind this one. But what's cool is, there's a power called Incapacitate that's in the basic version, and you have to be near a character, and you can incapacitate that character, which basically just adds a action token to the character. Now, if the character already had one action token, you would be maxing the character out. Each character can only have up to 2 action tokens until it's sort of out. It can still do free actions, but it can't really take any of the main actions until you remove those action tokens in a refresh, kind of an end of phase. We'll go over the phases here in just a minute. Where once you go to the advanced side, now that same power has reach of 4, so you can go up to 4 spaces away and still be able to do that incapacitate, and also add that incapacitate to more characters than just the single character. So it really amps up the level of degree to how impactful these powers are. Let's get to the phases of the game, which is pretty straightforward, just kind of goes back and forth across the table. There's only 4 kind of steps to a turn. You're going to do the start of turn actions. There are things that may play out and happen during the very start of your turn. Then you're going to have your actual actions. Then you're going to have your end of turn things that are going to happen. Again, specific actions, powers, things that happen at sort of the end of the quote-unquote turn. And then you're going to do your refresh phase, which basically means any character that you have in your team that you did not assign an action token to, that did not take an action for that turn, you can then wipe those action tokens away from that character. And that's important strategy in this game because each character can only have a max of 2 of these action tokens before it can't do any standard actions anymore. You can always do free actions. And you may max out characters, and if you have really powerful free actions in your team, that may be part of your strategy. But you do kind of want to watch that action economy, because if you max out your actions, you can't do anything until you then do another turn and then do nothing with that model. Then you can wipe those actions away, and in the next turn, you can actually use that model to do stuff again. So it's really just a way to ensure that a player's team doesn't have super overpowered characters that are just OP'd, and they can just keep doing massive powerful spells and moves and combos over and over and over. That's a really good way to eliminate that and force the player to have the strategy to ensure that if they want to do a really powerful combo, they've really got to think about how they want to, over the course of multiple turns, set that scenario up. And that's one of the things I really like about Heroclix, is it does a really, really good job in its design in making you strategically think about how to use your team together over the course of multiple turns. Not just, okay, it's my turn and I'm just going to do this and hopefully it goes the way that I want. And the next turn I'm going to do all of this and hopefully it goes the way that I want. You're really limited from that perspective because of the action economy in this game. And that's done really well, I think, in Heroclix. In trying to compare this, because at the end of the day, this is just a tabletop miniatures squad tactics game. And there's a lot of games on the market that do this, okay? But this one does it really, really well when it comes to action economy, and even some of the things that this game has that I feel like even dabble into kind of the D&D type of rules as well, which is pretty cool. So we'll kind of go into, okay, when you get into that action phase, what does that look like? You are allowed to take 3 actions when it's on your turn across your team members, okay? You got a team of 5 members, let's say, and this is the team that you built, then you would have to decide who amongst all of this, sorry, Watcher, who amongst all of this gets those 3 actions. So that's something else you got to kind of think about as well as you're kind of, doing things and trying to position yourself across the board. It's really going to play out over a number of turns before you might get to move and do something with each member of your crew. Now, I will mention really quick, and then we'll jump back to the actions. This set only comes with all what we'll call standard models. It does not come with any unique or prime models. It's all just kind of the standard models here. Now, prime models are models that you can only have one of within your team of 300 points. That's kind of the standard team build, is a 300-point team. Unique models, you can have one of each unique. That's why they're called unique, but you can have as many uniques as you want as long as you only have one of them. When it comes to the standard models, you can have as many copies of those as you actually want within your team. You just can't have any, and you just can't violate the rules of the primes and the uniques. But again, this set doesn't, it's a box set. It doesn't come with any of the primes or uniques. If you want the primes or uniques, you want to build out sort of this what-if Marvel team, they are going to have brick boosters for this particular set as well that you can buy, like any booster box, and get more of these models to build out more teams, okay? So, kind of a sidebar there. Let's go back to the actions. So when we look at the actions, you can take the 3, like we said, across your team. Now the thing with those 3 is you can do as many free actions as you want, but you're bound to those 3 actions across your team. And you're bound to having no figure, as we said, get more than 2 actions until they're kind of out for the count outside of their free actions. Now, those actions are comprised of pretty basic things. So you can move, that's an action, and all of your stats will be right here on your dial. You'll be able to see exactly what your stats are. And you'll have this card in front of you as well that will show your entire dial and all the stats, and even as you click down, how those stats and those powers may be changing. It's all right here on this card, okay? So you can very easily, have reference to that and see that. And it's not going to be a surprise like, oh, all of a sudden you've now lost this major ability that you had and you wanted to use it, but you got damaged. Now you no longer have it. You're going to know that because you've got this card right in front of you. So right here, you're going to have your movement, your attack, your defense, your ranged attack, how many characters you can hit ranged, as well as the overall damage that your character does, all on your dial. And you'll see these things as you're seeing the overviews. The overhead of these dials will show that. You can see all that. Okay? So one action may be to move, right? And then after you've moved your either full amount, or maybe you didn't want to move your full amount, that's fine. You then would acquire an action token. Now you would be able to say, well, I'm going to spend a second action, but just understand that person's going to be out for a round, right? Unless you have free actions, you can't touch them for a round, and then you got to refresh and pull these off. So then now, second turn, you're not going to have them. Third turn, you can have them back again. So maybe you want to use your second action on that person, and you do, and then they attack. Now, you can either attack at range, or you can attack close at melee, and that's just called either close or range, okay? There may be different reasons that you'd want to do that, depending on the character. Maybe some characters can only attack at close, and they don't have a ranged attack. So it depends on what that character can do. You would then use an action to attack. Now, you can also use an action to enhance that attack. You can't in that situation because I used both. But let's say that you didn't move. Let's say you just attacked at ranged, and you also wanted to use a power. If you want to use a power, those are the ones you're going to find here on the back of the card, and you would just look at your dial, and if there is a box around that dial that has a color on it, you'll just go to your card and you'll say, oh, the box around that dial is light blue. Okay, I'll look at my card. Yep, this little circle here is light blue. This is for Doctor Strange, and this is for Stomper, but you'll find it on the card, and it's light blue. Okay, what does that do? And then you'll look that power up. You'll go right to your actions. You'll look the power up. You'll find it right on the sheet, and it'll tell you exactly what it does. And essentially, it just enhances your attack, or it will enhance your move, or it will enhance your defense. And that's how this is used. Okay, so pretty straightforward. You can move, you can attack close, attack at ranged, or you can use a power. That's essentially all the actions that you would be taking. The other thing that I think is really cool when it comes to movement is when you, let's say this was an enemy player, and this was my character here, and I wanted to move over here. Well, if I go 1 and I move right here, anytime I come into a square that is adjacent around an enemy model, your movement stops. You have to stop. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you decide to just stop and you then say, okay, I'm not going to use another action there. I'm going to use an action on another character. Or maybe you say, okay, I messed up there and I tried to sneak by and I forgot I had to stop, so now I'll attack and I'll use a second action of my 3 for that turn. But let's say that you really wanted to continue to move forward. You have to do something called a breakaway. It's almost kind of like in D&D where if you want to pass an enemy character or you attack and you want to move away, they get an attack of opportunity. They're not getting an attack of opportunity, but it's similar from the perspective of you have to do something to try to break away. And if you're successful, then you can break away and continue your move. But if you're not successful, you have to stay there. And you do get penalized from the perspective of you have to take an action token against your character, even if you were doing something that would not require an action token. Sometimes there's special things that will allow models to move around without taking an action token. In this case, even if that was something you could do, when you try to break away, if you can't, you do get dinged with that action token. Most of the time, after you move, you're going to get that action token anyway, but it is just sort of a rule that you have to do this kind of breaking away thing if you move past an enemy model, which I think is pretty cool. And that's very easy. You basically just roll a die. If you get 1 to 3, it's a fail. If you get 4 to 6, it's a success. So I rolled a 4. In this case, it would be a success, and I would continue my move on. And that's the one kind of, funny rule when it comes to like moving that you have to know. The other thing that you'll want to know when it comes to attacking, rule-wise, which is another thing that I kind of like, is if you are in contact or adjacent to an enemy character, you can't do a ranged attack. Okay, I mean you generally can't do a range. If you're in combat like this, you can't ranged attack someone you're standing right next to. That's another rule in this game. You have to do the melee attack. Unless you have a special ability that you can do a ranged attack within melee, base-to-base contact. But if you have a ranged character, let's say Doctor Strange was right here, and Party Thor moved in and was right there, and Doctor Strange was actually trying to do a ranged attack against this character, Doctor Strange would not be able to. And again, unless they had some type of special ability that would negate that standard rule. But if you're in contact with another enemy character, you can't actually even attack ranged because you're kind of in contact with that other character and they're sort of occupying you. So you'd have to figure out how to first break away. You'd have to get success on your die. You'd then have to use an action, and then you'd have to do another action to do a ranged attack. So that's how that's going to work. And I think that's all the kind of rules that you sort of have to know that are outside just the standard sort of moving around the board. You do have line of sight in this game as well, where you need to be able to draw a line from the center of your base to the center of another base. And if there's ever a point where you're crossing through another model, doesn't matter if it's friendly or not, you can't see them, you don't have line of sight, you can't really fire. So there is good strategic positioning within this miniatures game as well. You really need to make sure that something on the board, like here, these brown lines, they actually block line of sight. So and you can't just move through them. So there's things like that as well, where you're going to have to make sure that you've actually positioned yourself well to even be able to see properly the model that you're trying to attack. And you'll find that strategy-wise, when players are playing, they may move a model in front of another one of their models. It might be a little beefier, and that may be just to lure the enemy to attack them, because now they've blocked line of sight to maybe someone else on their team. But you got to be careful yourself that you don't actually move a model in the way of what you're trying to do next, and now you can't actually attack who you want to attack because you got one of your friendlies that's in the way. You can't take friendly fire. That is one thing in this game that doesn't exist. You can't take friendly fire, but you can block your line of sight with your own friendlies. Okay. The last thing that I'll mention is when you attack, how that actually works is you will roll the dice and you will add whatever value comes up on those die. You will add that to your combat value, and that value has to meet or exceed the target model's defense value that's printed right on their dial. It's that easy. Now, one of the things that's kind of cool, which adds a little bit of fun to this attack, is when you roll the dice, if you ever get double ones, that's a critical failure. And when you get a critical failure, it is an automatic miss because you'll never beat the target. It's an automatic miss. And on top of that, you will take 1 damage. Your model will take 1 damage. If you ever roll double sixes, or the crits, roll 2 of those, which, these are limited dice. They go with the set. It's pretty cool. It's got the Watcher face on it. If you roll 2 of those, your model is an automatic success on the hit. The model will also take 1 extra damage. So you'll get 1 extra damage on top of it. And you have the ability to push the model up to 3 spaces away from you. So it's like they get hit so hard, they get this blast back. And they will stop as soon as they hit like a wall, or if they hit another character, they won't continue. And that doesn't do any damage. It's essentially they just get the 1 extra damage from the crit, and then they get thrown back up to 3 spaces. So that's how a crit will work. Any other doubles, so 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, will also create that knockback. So anytime you get doubles, you get a knockback, except for the double ones. A double one is just a straight up critical fail, and you take 1 point of damage. Anytime you take damage or you're healed, it's as simple as just grabbing your dial and clicking it one way or the other way that many times. So if Party Thor was to take 2 damage from Doctor Strange, he would 1, 2 damage. And again, those dials changing and potentially changing the abilities and powers that are going to be available to Party Thor or any of the other characters. So that's really it, team. That is how you play Heroclix. It's a very straightforward, simple game. The only piece of this that is a little bit of a learning curve when you first sit down that you might feel a little bit overwhelmed with is every single character on your team having all of those individual powers. And it really is something where I suggest really sitting down and playing a game where you just kind of ignore the powers and just focus on the board, the movement. Just do your standard move, attack close, and attack at ranged, and kind of ignore sort of all the powers. Maybe play a game like that just to get the understanding of how to do the basics of what it is. Then your second game, start maybe your scenarios and start messing with your powers. And it really is just, because you don't have to use your powers every time. It's your choice if you want to spend an extra action to really enhance that attack or that move or that defense. So that's everything, team. I hope you enjoyed the What If run through here. And if you've never played Heroclix before, hopefully the rules that we went over will help you understand. It wasn't a step-by-step. You still need to read the rule book, which, again, is that long. Okay, it's a very, very straightforward. We went over all the main rules here in the video. Or if you have any questions, I'm hoping that what we went over in the video will answer those questions for you and make it a little bit clearer. We are not going to be doing any unboxing of the bricks here on the channel for this particular set. So if you are interested in the What If set, I would suggest going out online, and you can probably find some images of all the different models that are going to be in this set. I know there's going to be some really, really cool ones, and I think this set will probably be fairly popular just because it's your classic Marvel characters, but the what-if style, and that's pretty awesome. All right, so hit that like, hit the subscribe below to join the team. Keep rolling them crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.